Okay, thank you very much. I will only talk about all of the things that could be talked about in coping with stress. It's a very broad topic indeed, but I certainly want to talk about two topics for us as I close out today. But let me first say thank you to Torben for the invitation to be here. It came from him. And it has really been a rich experience being here and interacting with you. I am really impressed by the number of people who are here. For me, that says something important about your interest, your commitment, and what the future will look like in this field, that so many of you took time out of your life to be here. I also want to compliment all of the organizers for an excellent meeting. This has really been a well-planned, excellent meeting, and a lot has happened here. And I want to thank you all and let you know that even as I leave, I will keep you in prayers that God will bless the efforts you make in this part of the vineyard. And I expect to hear great things of the work that has happened here. So again, it's been a wonderful opportunity for my wife and I to be here with you. I want to touch bases, and what I did, since I'll be leaving my PowerPoint slides, I'm going to skip over some slides because I put more slides in, since I'll be leaving them as a resource than I can cover. I want to talk about two topics briefly as I close when I think of coping with stress. One is recent research on sleep and how important sleep is. If you forget anything else I say, remember this: the evidence now on the importance of sleep is as important to your health as exercise, if not more important. I mean, the overwhelming scientific evidence in the last 15 years on the importance of sleep is striking. And we really need to pay much more attention. It's one of the 8 natural healers that we all believe in, but I think we often pay short shrift attention to sleep. So the importance of sleep. The second thing I want to talk about is recent research on what is the most widely used restorative activity in the industrialized world, and that's alcohol. Most people cope with stress in our societies by alcohol, by using alcohol. And there's recent research on moderate alcohol consumption and health that I think that health leaders should be aware of, and I'll touch briefly on that topic as well. Okay. Is this not? Oh, it's not on, so no wonder. Okay. All right, so first, the Bible on stress. There are many wonderful passages of scripture that we can think about when we think about what the Lord is offering us in terms of stress. Come ye apart and rest a while. Jesus said to his disciples, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. We touched base briefly on the power of this weekly mini vacation for stress, casting all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. I think it's a part of the religious meaning system we need to have in terms of dealing with challenges of life. But Psalm 127:2 said, he giveth his beloved sleep. And remember that sleep is a gift that God has given us because he loves us. And I think of the experience of Jacob running away under high stressful conditions. And when night came, he lay down and found a place to sleep. For me, it's a reminder of the importance of restful sleep, especially in our rush world, and that God designed that we should get rest, and that night was the optimum time for sleep. We live in a society where millions of people are not getting enough sleep. Millions of people are having trouble sleeping. Research documents that the exposure to so much artificial light, 24-hour television, the internet, too much caffeine are some of the big factors that operate in terms of leading our entire populations not to get sleep. Research suggests that most people today are getting at least 1 hour less of sleep than their grandparents or great-grandparents did. In terms of research in the United States specifically, Americans sleep 2 hours less on average than before the invention of the light bulb. So we are getting much less sleep than earlier generations did. Briefly, this is some, and I will touch base on some of these factors a little bit more, but research is quite striking that inadequate sleep adversely affects our metabolic functioning, our immune functioning, certainly affects our mood, emotions, mental health, negative impacts on cognitive performance, negative impacts on public safety, on quality of life, and even on overall mortality. There are studies, prospective studies, that show that people who fail to get adequate sleep actually live shorter lives, higher risk of overall mortality. Let me just elaborate on some of these briefly. This is work done by Sheldon Cohen, a great colleague of mine at Carnegie Mellon University. He uses a model of scientific research where he brings people into a laboratory setting, quarantines them for a week, exposes them to a virus, and looks to see who becomes vulnerable to the virus. The exposure is identical. What varies is what the social, psychological characteristics people bring to them. So I'll just tell you, one of the things he finds is that people who have good, supportive relationships exposed to the identical virus, everybody's exposed to the identical virus, those who have good, supportive relationships, less likely to get the virus. Is an example of the work he's done. But one of the things he's done in this work as well is look to see if there's a relationship between how much sleep individuals are getting. They're all in a controlled environment for 1 week. They're all exposed to the same virus. Is there a relationship between how much they sleep and whether they are vulnerable to the virus or not? And what he found is persons who slept less than 7 hours were 3 times more likely to develop a cold. So they're all exposed to the same thing, identical exposure, in an identical environment. They're quarantined for a week. Their sleep during that time predicts their vulnerability to getting a cold. Those with lower sleep efficiency were almost 6 times more likely to develop a cold than those with more sleep efficiency. And these factors existed after adjusting for a number of potential confounded variables. Percent of days feeling rested was not associated with the cold. So it's really what's happening with them with sleep and their sleep efficiency, and I'll come back to the sleep efficiency later in my talk, is what matters. Another recent study found that losing 3 hours of sleep can decrease immune functioning by as much as 50%. And we want our immune system functioning well to protect us for the range of potential exposures. There are also studies of university health services in the United States. That these are the health services on university campuses that provide services to students. And what they find is there's always a sharp spike in illnesses in student populations and university campuses the week after midterm exams. Because students were up those nights studying for exam, getting inadequate sleep. The following week, there is a demand on university health services because of lower immune functioning, greater vulnerability to illness as a result of not getting adequate sleep. Here is another study that found restricting sleep in healthy young men to 4 hours per night for 6 weeks. So just for 6 nights, sorry, not 6 weeks. Just for 6 nights in 1 week, but forcing them to sleep only 4 hours was associated with metabolic and endocrine changes consistent with the aging process. They literally were aging more rapidly by looking at factors like impaired glucose tolerance, increased activity of the sympathetic nervous system, metabolic and endocrine alterations, increased evening cortisol levels, and normal rise in tryptophan at night strikingly reduced. So several fundamental changes in physiological functioning linked to just 1 week of restricted sleep. There's also evidence showing that there's a relationship between sleep and the risk of obesity. And obesity is a huge problem in our society and in our world. Women who slept less than 5 hours were more likely to gain weight and be obese than those sleeping 7 hours a night. Another study found those sleeping less than 5 hours a night had lower levels of leptin, which is an appetite-suppressing hormone, something you want to have functioning normally. They also had increased level of an appetite-stimulating hormone. So there's other studies that show this relationship between sleep and just our need to eat more comfort foods and less ability to maintain control of appetite. There are studies that show a relationship between inadequate sleep and the risk of heart disease. This is a large study of nurses, the Nurses' Health Study. Compared to those sleeping 8 hours a night, those sleeping less than 5 hours had an almost 40% greater risk of developing heart disease. Again, evidence that inadequate sleep having consequences. Sleep and accidents. This is studies that have looked at what happens in the United States, it happens in Europe too, where at certain times of year we change the clock. 1 hour we go backwards, so 1 hour we go forward, and for many people that means 1 hour less sleep. 1 hour of sleep deprivation increases the number of accidents in the United States on highways by 8%. 1 hour of extra sleep reduces highway accidents by 8%. So just when we change to daylight savings time in the spring or change back to the time in the fall, we can see changes overall in accidents rates on the highways. Would you drive drunk? After you've been awake for 18 hours, research shows your driving is just as impaired as if you'd had 2 drinks of alcohol. If you've been awake for 24 hours, your driving is as impaired as if you've had 4 to 6 drinks of alcohol. So optimum driving performance is evident after a good night's sleep. And that's, I think it's been mentioned before in this conference that when we don't get adequate sleep, we are essentially driving drunk. There's also research showing that sleep is linked, adequate sleep, to improved academic performance. Getting an extra hour of sleep has many positive benefits to students. It reduces absenteeism, improves mental health, improves academic performance, leads to fewer car accidents involving teenagers driving to school. And I don't know if this is an issue in Norway, it's an issue in the United States that many schools are starting school so early, so the kids have to get to school very early, and a number of school districts in the United States now, based on this research, is going to a later start of the school day, starting at 9 a.m. instead of 8 a.m., for example, and finding that there are benefits in terms of academic performance and health linked to the later start, which gives the students better night's sleep. I also want to touch base briefly on one aspect, and that is that the sleep of our children is affected by what else is happening in the household. So this is one study that found that when there's marital conflict among parents, 8 to 9-year-old children may not be aware of the details of the marital conflict, but it adversely affects their aware that something is wrong between their parents and their sleep is impaired. Another study found that higher levels of sleep problems in adolescents were associated with higher levels of risk-taking behavior. Kids who don't get enough sleep are more likely to engage in risk-taking behavior. And another study found inadequate sleep in high school students predicted poorer grades and fewer extracurricular activities. So again, the sleep of our children are affected by a lot of what else is happening. There is a striking body of work that I think should be of particular interest to Seventh-day Adventists. There's studies that show that when you don't get adequate sleep, it affects your moral judgment, your ability to make right decisions. And this one, the first study, 2 nights of sleep deprivation increased adults' willingness to do things, agree with solutions that they knew violated their personal beliefs. Another study found after 2 nights of sleep deprivation, adults faced difficulty in withholding an inappropriate response even when they were able to attend to the stimuli and respond accurately to appropriate stimuli. So this is evidence shows, and that particularly the work of Drummond et al. Is a group of researchers that are studying the impact of sleep deprivation on making right choices. And when we are sleep deprived, we are less likely to do things that we know and believe is right. So I think we should think about that. If I were a good devil, I would try to keep all of God's people sleep deprived, because they're much more vulnerable to doing things that they believe they shouldn't do. There's evidence that late evening meals has a negative effect on sleep. One study found that consuming a large, high-fat meal for dinner was associated with decreased REM sleep, that's rapid eye movement sleep, something that we want to get, and more nighttime awakening. So one strategy, generally as well, is to eat dinner early and keep it a light meal. How much sleep should we get? The evidence is that there appears to be some variation among adults in terms of how much sleep you need. However, that variation seems to fall within a range. 6 to 8 hours is the range in which adults need sleep. Research finds that persons get less than 6 hours sleep. All kinds of health problems are associated with less than 6 hours sleep. At the same time, research finds that adults who get more than 9 hours sleep, there are all kinds of health problems associated there as well. So 6 to 8 seems to be the good medium, and there's variation within that category. Again, younger children need more sleep, and we should ensure that they get that. This is a recent report from the National Sleep Foundation of what is a good night's sleep, and they have come up with, this is just hot off the press, a 2017 publication. And what they're saying, there are 4 criteria you can use to know if you are getting a good night's sleep. Number 1, you take half an hour or less to fall asleep. So lying in bed for a long time before you're able to sleep is a problem. 2, you wake up no more than once per night. 3, if you do wake up in the night, you fall back asleep in 20 minutes. And 4, you are asleep for at least 85% of the time you spend in bed. And this is based on a lot of scientific research, and they've come from a consensus panel, came up with what are 4 factors you can look at and say, are you really getting a good night's sleep? Okay, steps to a good night's sleep. Quickly, I'm going to run through these really quickly. You can look at them. 1, wake up with the sun. Now, I know for persons in the north, that might be a challenge. But, okay, we can come back to that. Eat a balanced diet. Number 2, there's particular interest in an amino acid tryptophan that seems to play an important role in controlling our sleep performance, and there's more information there. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving. Make exercise a part of your day. The Bible says the sleep of a laboring man is sweet. The word for labor, the Hebrew word abad, 6 days shalt thou labor. Abad is a word used to describe vigorous physical exertion in Old Testament times. God wants us to exercise, and research shows that one key to getting a good night's sleep is to exercise during the day. And I have a number of texts here. I often say when I talk to Adventist audiences that Seventh-day Adventists should be the healthiest people in the world, the most physically fit people. Why? Because there are 2 commands in the 4th commandment. 1 is remember the Sabbath day. The other is 6 days you should get abad. 6 days you should labor. Labor is vigorous physical exertion, is the Hebrew word. If you're not getting vigorous physical exertion from your normal routine activities, you need to make sure that you otherwise get it in your life. Okay, the research on exercise and sleep. 4th point to a good night's sleep, avoid sleep-depriving substances like alcohol, tobacco. Of course, if you have to take antidepressants, I'm not saying you shouldn't take them, but realize that many of them have negative consequences on sleep. Caffeine also has negative consequences on sleep. Establishing a regular routine is really important for many people who struggle with sleep. Having a routine, having a regular time for sleep is one of the strategies that tends to work well. Sleeping in the dark is also important. There's a huge body of research looking at what is called light at night and how light at night adversely impacts health. There's research, for example, I've been doing work in the area of breast cancer, finds a relationship between exposure to light at night and increased risk of breast cancer, just as an example. And finally, let go and let God. What do I mean? For many people, a source of sleep problems is worry. and anxiety about what's going to happen tomorrow and what's happening in their lives and all of the stress. And really, as Christians, reminding ourselves that Jesus said we can cast all of our cares upon him because he cares for us. That we can come to him where we are laden and heavy burdened, and he will give us rest. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, the psalmist said, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. Realizing that we have all of these resources can be a powerful factor in terms of our sleep. Okay, let me move quickly to talk about moderate alcohol consumption as a health enhancing reduction strategy. That should be a question mark after that. I think the question mark was either I omitted it or the slide, something's not quite right on the slide. Okay, there was a 2011 report from the World Health Organization that pointed out that the harmful use of alcohol is not given proper attention in public policy. And lesser risks are given much bigger priority by nations around the world than the importance of alcohol. It points out that 2.5 million people die each year from alcohol-related causes. Alcohol is a risk factor for more than 60 different diseases. It's the third global risk factor for disease and disability. The world's leading cause of death for men 15 to 59. Say that again. Alcohol is the leading cause of death in the world for men ages 50 to 59. So it's still a huge problem. Here's a report coming out from a British group that ranks the drugs that have the most negative impact on society, and number one is alcohol. More negative impact on society than heroin, crack cocaine, tobacco, cannabis. Alcohol is the number one drug in the world. This is a report from the UK Independent Scientific Committee, a Lancet publication in 2010. So the point is, alcohol is important. But someone says, aren't there health benefits to alcohol? And here's a 2005 review paper I'm drawing on that concluded there is strong evidence from prospective observational studies that persons who drink alcohol moderately have a lower rate of overall mortality than heavy drinkers and non-drinkers, that over 100 prospective epidemiologic studies have documented this J-shaped curve, and by that we mean that the lowest level of risk is at the moderate alcohol level, and the people with moderate consumption do better than those who drink no alcohol at all. This paper concluded that most authorities now attribute a causal role to the relationship. Moderate alcohol consumption is presumed to reduce the risk of heart disease, and that is conventional wisdom was conventional wisdom within the scientific world. What I want to share with you is that even in 2005, there were lots of problems with the evidence, but now there is a range. I can't even keep up. I was thinking of updating the research of some of the recent studies, and there are so many recent studies, but I will talk about several of them. One of the reasons that gives some credence to the role of alcohol having positive effects on heart disease is that a number of mechanisms have been identified by which this might operate. So it seemed quite plausible. On the other hand, there are complexities and complications inherent in interpreting this literature. This is from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, in the United States. It's the government health agency system. Had a formal position paper on alcohol in 2004 and said, there are really a number of problems with making sense of these data. What are the problems? And now we even know more about the problems than we knew then, and I'm going to share with you. One of them is confounding. What do I mean by confounding? I'm a researcher, and confounding is something I worry about in every single study I conduct. What do I mean by that? You see, when we are studying human populations, we can't do experimental studies. We cannot typically randomly assign people at birth to be a smoker, a non-smoker, and look to see what happens over their lifetime. So we are using observational data. And the question is, are we statistically adjusting for all the potential confounders, the factors that might be related to the outcome I'm interested in? And if I don't, I may jump to erroneous conclusions, and there are many examples in science when this has occurred. Let me give you a concrete example of confounding. If I did a study, and I did one in Norway, and I did one in the UK, and I did one in the US, and I did one in Zimbabwe, and in each of these studies, I look to see, do men who travel with matches in their pocket, or women who have matches or a cigarette lighter in their purse, are they more likely to die of lung cancer? And I guarantee you, in every society in which I study, people who travel, walk around with matches, have a greater risk of dying of lung cancer. Confounding would be assuming that walking around with matches is the cause of lung cancer. But you see, walking around with matches is linked to something else, the higher likelihood of cigarette smoking, and cigarette smoking is the cause of lung cancer. But if I didn't study cigarette smoking and I only looked, do you have matches or not? Matches or not will be strongly linked in every study I did in every country to lung cancer. And assuming that matches causes lung cancer is an example of confounding. So in a study, what it would be important for me to do is to include cigarette smoking and not just measure, do you have matches or not, to be able to test and separate the effects of the real cause from something else that's related to a factor that's the real cause. That's confounding. So that's the problem we worry about. So the big question then is, all of these studies have found that people who drink moderately do better in terms of health than people who don't. The question is that caused by drinking, or are moderate drinkers different from abstainers in some other ways that we haven't looked at and we didn't measure in the study? So here is an example of a large study done in the United States by researchers from the Centers for Disease Control of more than 200,000 people, and what they found, on average, moderate drinkers were different than non-drinkers. They were older, they were more likely to be widowed or never married, they had less education and income, they had less access to medical care and preventive screenings, they were more likely to be overweight and physically inactive, they had poorer psychological well-being, they were more likely to have diabetes and hypertension, and many of the studies of moderate drinking and heart disease have not adjusted for all of these factors. In fact, this study found that 27 of 30 risk factors for heart disease, moderate drinkers did better than non-drinkers, statistically significantly better, on 27 of 30 factors for heart disease, none of them having anything to do with alcohol. So that the effect then of moderate drinking on heart disease outcomes may not be about the alcohol at all. It may be about the fact we're looking at two very different population groups. And that at least some of the reported protective effects of moderate drinking are likely due to confounded, this problem I talked about. Here is another study in the US, found that moderate drinkers had twice the level of household income than all other drinking categories. So they were, generally speaking, a very high income group and very different. And why is that important? Because socioeconomic status is one of the most powerful predictors of variations in health. So do we know that if we adjust for all of these factors, we can eliminate the effect? Here's a study done by Fillmore and colleagues that found, meta-analysis of 3 prospective studies of women, found that moderate drinkers did better. When they adjusted for other psychosocial factors, the effect went away. One small study that showed that. Another problem is what's called the misclassification of drinking categories. One of the problems, in simple language, with the research on alcohol and health is that in the abstaining category, many of the studies have included former drinkers. And the question becomes, if we classify the categories correctly, do we still find the same association? This is a very important paper published by Fillmore and colleagues in 2006 that found a meta-analysis of 54 of these 100 studies, prospective studies, In 35 of them, they could reclassify people correctly, and what they found is that when in studies in which they fixed both of the misclassification errors, there was no protective effect of moderate consumption. So that moderate consumption was, the association between moderate consumption and better cardiovascular disease and overall mortality was completely eliminated when the appropriate classification of drinking categories was made. There is a more recent paper published in 2016 that found exactly the same thing. This is even looking at more studies and looking at more recent data, and found if you correctly classify drinkers, and this is a direct quote from the paper, there is no net benefit of moderate alcohol consumption compared with lifetime abstention or occasional drinking. So the effect is a methodological artifact, although it has been replicated many times. One of the problems as well that researchers are pointing to in the moderate alcohol consumption and health relationship is that moderate alcohol consumption health is related to such a broad range of health conditions. And the chart is showing you health conditions that have documented an association between moderate alcohol consumption and better health. And what researchers are saying, there is no plausible biological mechanism by which alcohol would lead to this diverse range, and that this slide doesn't even have all of the factors, but this is just a sample of some of the factors that we found this association between moderate alcohol consumption and health. So this is a review paper, and it says that there's no plausible biological mechanism, and one of the steps you look at in causality is to think of, are there plausible biological pathways? And this association exists across such a broad range of conditions, it just doesn't even make sense. This is a 2014 British Medical Journal paper. This, most people believe, is the smoking gun, the single study that puts the issue of moderate alcohol consumption and heart disease risk to bed. It's a large multi-center study, 155 researchers, data from 56 epidemiologic studies, over 260,000 people. What they did though, this is hard to explain, but they did an instrumental analysis. It's a kind of analytic strategy that economists often use, and where they are, and it avoids all of the problems with confounding, because what they are using as a marker for moderate consumption is not actual consumption itself, but a genetic characteristic. There's a genetic characteristic that predicts lower level of consumption, and so methodologically, they're using this genetic factor as a marker for alcohol consumption that avoids a lot of the methodological limitations. In fact, using this kind of instrumental analysis approach is similar to using a randomized clinical trial. And what they find in this study is, and this is a direct quote from the first author, contrary to what earlier reports have shown, it now appears that any exposure to alcohol has a negative effect on heart health. There is no benefit at all to alcohol consumption to the health of the heart from this is arguably the best scientific study that has ever been done on the topic. No benefit whatsoever. British Medical Journal. So much so, in 2016, the UK Department of Health has issued new guidelines for the British on alcohol consumption. They are saying that there's no justification of drinking for health reasons. They warn that any level of alcohol increases the risk of cancer, and they now say there were two standards. Men could drink essentially like 2 glasses of wine per day. It was a safe level, and women half that. They've now saying women and men should be at the same level of women to keep health risks at a low level. The report says even this level of drinking has health risks, but the health risks are low if you stay at this level. So it's even, this is the first nation that has now completely changed their recommendations based on the existing scientific evidence from the UK. I want to show you 2 other quick slides, and I'm going to stop. and tell you about a resource I'm going to leave you with that I will not go over. This is a paper by Rod Jackson and colleagues in 2005. The significance of this was a commentary in the Lancet Journal. He is one of the foremost researchers doing work on moderate alcohol consumption and health, and had assumed, like everyone else, that this was a causal relationship. And he wrote this paper and his team saying, the likely explanation that this relationship, moderate alcohol consumption and health, was causal, we never took into account that it might be caused by uncontrolled confounding, and that it's an artifact, a methodological artifact. He said that was too readily dismissed by many researchers, including ourselves. And he concluded, quote, any coronary protection from light to moderate drinking will be very small and unlikely to outweigh the harms. This is Rod Jackson, one of the world's leading alcohol researchers, back in 2005 saying, we made a mistake, we just never took seriously the methodological limitations of this work that we has done. I love this quotation from an editorial in New England Journal of Medicine back in 2003. If alcohol were a newly discovered drug, no pharmaceutical company would develop it to prevent cardiovascular disease. Now would many physicians use it as a therapy that might reduce the rate of myocardial infarction by 25 to 50%, and they're even assuming the evidence was correct, even with that assumption, but that would result in thousands of additional deaths per year due to cancer, motor vehicles, and liver disease. Substituting one disease for another is not a medical advance. And that was a 2003 paper, even before all of the striking evidence we have today. So I think what I'm saying is the evidence now is 100% clear from the most recent research that there's absolutely no benefit to moderate alcohol consumption and health. Are there studies that found that? Yes, but the relationship was not causal, and we need to be aware of that. I just want to remind us as we think about behavioral change, we realize why should we take care of the bodies that God has given us? Because they are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And whatever we do, we want to do it all to the glory of God. How do we do it? Through Christ's strength. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do it because God has promised me He'll never suffer me to be tempted above what He's able. We are able, but will with the temptation make a way of escape. Jude 24 says God is able to keep us from falling. Philippians 2:13, that He will work in you to will and to do. And Psalm 50:15, we can call on Him in the day of trouble and He will deliver us. What I am also leaving for you that I do not have time to go through are additional slides that deal with 12 negative effects that moderate alcohol consumption has on health that I haven't even talked about. Its impact on our motor functioning, on sexual promiscuity, on the fact that there's none of the studies that have looked at alcohol, there's absolutely no benefit to persons under age 40. Even the studies that have found benefit did not find benefit to persons under age 40. There's no benefit for the youth, whereas the alcohol industry encourages young people to drink alcohol because of these benefits, and there's no benefits for the youth. So there's a bunch of slides here. I don't have time to discuss them, but I thought, since I'm leaving slides for you, this is a good resource that you can also have. It has been a blessing and a privilege. God bless you in your work. God bless you as you let your light shine for Him. And if I don't see you on earth, I will look for you on the tree of life, 3 o'clock, first Sabbath in heaven. I want you to be there. Thank you.